portray something. So Sonia said that, and Adrian and Jimena, Miguel, Gabriela, thank you, a bunch of people. Jose V also saw that. Whoa, thanks, Hedda, too. I just saw all those answers. Step 2 now is out of the words below, so that you see in this box, which of the lists have the same meaning as the word delineate? So chat that in as well, and we'll talk about it in a couple of minutes. Thanks, Abner. That was super quick. Let's see. Thanks, Adrian, Sonia. Thanks, Gabby. Thanks, Abner. Abner, will you share the 2 words that you chose?
Define and sketch.
Define and sketch. Who agrees with define and sketch? You can put a thumb emoticon emoji, like a thumbs up, or put I agree in the chat. Define and sketch. Ivana agrees. Yep, Adrian agrees. Okay, and then Gabby, will you come off and share what you wrote?
I put define, characterize, tell, depict, and represent.
Yes, awesome. Yes, jump into your vocab logs. You can find them, like I just put in the chat, under week 19 English, so prior, and it's just over lessons 1 through 7. We're on lesson 4. And add these 2 vocab definitions. I just put them in the chat. Also in your vocab log, create a sentence. So use these words in the sentence. That's that last column. And I'll give us 2 minutes to do this. You can check the chat if you want to copy and paste the definitions, and just chat and done once you are ready to keep moving. Okay? And feel free to chat me any questions. Let's start reading section 3 of our book, The Omnivore's Dilemma. And then I'll give you all access to this PowerPoint, and in groups, you're going to finish reading it, then answer some questions together, and then we will join back in. So that's kind of how that's going to look. I'll just start by reading a couple pages and make sure you're paying attention. Think about, like, what is the central idea of this chapter? What do I have questions about? Which one I want to know more of? And yeah, just feel free to put in anything in the chat. I'll make it public so you all can chat in and give opinions. Okay, so CAFO, Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation. The old-fashioned way of raising cattle, like the old-fashioned way of growing corn, was on the small family farm. Cattle were raised in pastures, eating grass and hay, and the food they naturally eat. But as corn took over the family farm, so remember that situation with corn, right? How corn's everywhere. Cows and other animals were pushed out. Cattle are now raised in densely packed animal cities like pokies. These places are called CAFOs, Concentrated Animal Feeding Operations. Farmers gave up raising cattle because, as strange as it might seem, it costs a farmer more to grow feed corn than it costs a CAFO to buy it, thanks to those government subsidies. Eating meat used to be a special occasion in most American homes. Thanks to CAFOs, meat is now so cheap that many of us eat it 3 times a day. Of course, the American taxpayers have already paid part of the cost by subsidizing corn. But there are other parts involved in raising cattle this way. Costs that shoppers don't see when they buy a steak at the supermarket. On the old-fashioned farm, there's really no such thing as waste. Animal manure goes back into the fields as fertilizer. But the waste from CAFOs, those concentrated animal feeding operations, is a huge source of very toxic pollution. Tons of animal manure are produced with no good way of disposing it. The feedlots are also breeding grounds for new and deadly bacteria. Some of these bacteria are finding their way into our food. And there's another cost to raising cattle and CFOs, one that's even harder to see. These animals have evolved to eat grass, but in a CFO, they're forced to eat corn at considerable cost to their health, to the health of the land, and ultimately to the health of us, their eaters. So these concentrated animal feeding operations are just becoming like mass industries of breeding grounds for bacteria and waste, and there's nothing organic, like they're just eating corn. It's the reason why they have these is because they're cheaper and they're mass producing. And so within this American culture that we live in, the more product, the more money. There's not a lot of care with really what's going into the animals, what's coming out, and then what's coming to us. Okay. So steer number 5-3. So I'm going to pause there and I'm going to put you into groups. I'm going to share this link with you all. And let me real quick. Okay, so I'm going to share this link to this PowerPoint. You're just going to finish kind of reading the rest of, so finish reading the rest of the slides in your groups. You guys, everyone's saying that they're hungry. Oh, I thought this was super unappetizing to read, but sure, Abner. Okay, so you can jump into this PowerPoint. I'll have everyone click on this right now. It should be open. So PowerPoint's in the chat. Actually, let me make it so you all can be in it. So try this again. And then you're going to finish reading this with your groups. Once you finish, look on my screen super quickly. Slide 15 is where you and your group will discuss the section based off of the 4 questions. And then I'm going to pull us all back in like 10 minutes, and I'll just call on people from each group to share an answer to one of the 4 questions. Sorry, 4 questions. So that's what we'll do. Right now I see, let's see who's all in here. Finish the reading with your group. You can either read it, like take turns reading it, or maybe one person could read it. And then step 2, discuss the questions on slide 15. You can see all these directions in the chat. So we'll do 10 minutes. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to call on some people. Please come off mute. I would prefer that if you can. And then if not, you can put them in the chat. So let's check out our questions for today. So in your groups, answer these 4 questions. What were some of your reactions to things the author talked about in section 3? So that I read and then you all read, you finish it together. What are you interested to learn more about now? Number 3, what questions did this section bring up to you? And then 4th, what is the gist or central idea of this section? So let's call on someone from group number 5. Michelle, can you come off mute and answer one of these 4 questions that are on my screen that you answered in groups?
Answer number 1.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. What'd you say?
Answer number 1.
Okay, and what did you say what was your reaction?
Well, it was like surprising, but at the same time, not really, because we know like the process of how things go, but like the details they put into it, it was just like it kind of weirded us out, but at the same time, not really.
Yeah. Is that what you, Ivana, and Sonia kind of came up with? Yeah. Sonia or Ivana, do you guys want to add anything to that? Maybe like disgust is a way to describe that. Ivana says no. Who else Sonia said she was shook. Yeah, me too, for sure. Who else kind of had for number 1 as a reaction, like a feeling of disgust or shock? Yeah, Gabrielle agrees. Oh, Mihaela, you want to come off of mute and maybe add on to number 1 for your reaction then? Because that seems like a different reaction. So what you chatted me, your reaction where you said, no, I knew this. Can you expand on that a little?
I mean, if it's animal, it's supposed to come from somewhere. It's not that surprising, because it's like you eat pork chops, you eat pigs, like stuff like that. Like you can tell it's gonna be like they're gonna get slaughtered if they're making meat out of it.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Were you at all surprised at Mihaela, at the conditions though, at like these mass really tightly, or like when the calf was taken away from its mom, or was that something you also kind of knew?
I kind of already knew that too.
Yeah, that's good. Well, at least it wasn't like complete shock. I was kind of shocked when I read it because, I mean, that's not something I've always really thought about. Good. Okay, let's add. Let someone have someone answer 2, 3, or 4. And Gabby, I like what you put in the chat. Will you come off of mute and share that as like a reaction and also just something maybe you're more interested to learn about?
I said about like how the book was saying how these animals get certain diseases because of how us humans feed them, and then later on we're the ones that consume these animals.
Yeah, it's super ironic, right? I don't know. That's a really, really good point, Gabby. I love that you brought that up. Anything else that people want to add? Adrian, Jose V, Hedda, do you have anything you want to add? Any questions? So I'll put you back into groups as like a close-in thing. Oh, I meant to add these to this. And I'm going to send this link in the chat. You can also find it in your Google Classrooms. You and the breakout room you're in, you'll each have a slide. So depending on the room you're in, you'll go to that slide and you're going to add what you think the author's point of view is, the evidence of this view, the purpose, and your understanding. Then here's the link too. It's posted as well in your Google Classrooms. But let's close out today. So, oops, that's not it. Okay, let's close out and I'll have us do a quick exit ticket, then a quick reflection, and then we'll be good. So for your exit ticket, chat in, and you can see this on my screen, what is Michael Pollan's point of view on this section or central argument for this section? I'm going to read off a couple of these that sounded great. I really like a ton of these. I like how Miguel said his point of view is kind of as an outsider coming in, or as a consumer. That's so well said, Miguel. I love that. He is a consumer and he has a different perception on this industry. I really like what Gabby said. Gabby wrote, and this is so well said, he's disgusted by how these animals are treated and fed, mostly how these illnesses get taken care of before us humans eat the meat. Yeah, and like Adrian also chatted in, his point of view is when as an outsider, he's questioning these farmers and how they treat their animals. Ooh, Abner, will you come off mute and share what you just wrote in the chat?
That he wants the animals to be treated better.
Yeah, he does. That is definitely a point of view. And we can see that coming across in his tone. Good, really good. And I like what Jimena wrote too. His point of view is to tell the world that animals don't need to be treated like this. And beautifully said at the end, Jimena wraps it up by saying humans and animals come from the same world. They have the same health. Good, really good. Okay, I love those exit tickets today. Awesome. You all wrapped that up perfectly. Good. I'm glad we're internalizing this well. And also just think about one more thing to close us out today. Reflect, and you don't have to chat it in, or you can if you want to. Think about these 2 questions below. How did you contribute to our learning community today? How did you practice and focus on your chosen core value for this today? So it's mostly from, you chose one at the beginning of the week, but also think about this, chat those in, reflect, and then I'll close this out.